All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about simplifying cloud operations with Microsoft Copilot for Azure. My name is Matt Winkler. I'm joined with Cameron King, who will be doing some demos today from the product management team for the Portal mobile app and Copilot. And I'm also joined by a couple of other folks over at the experts table, Ruhi Mahalata, Joe Halleck, Eugene Bykov, Santosh. They're all part of the team that's building this. And I am also here on behalf of a team of engineers, designers, data scientists, product management, product marketing, business planning, lawyers, compliance, responsible AI experts, docs, and product teams across Microsoft who have come together to build this and talk about it today. So, what we're going to talk about today is Microsoft Copilot for Azure. We're going to touch base on some of the challenges of cloud administration. Then we're going to get right into what is Microsoft Copilot for Azure. Then we'll go into demos. It's a pretty demo-heavy session. Cameron has done a great job building a set of demos across a number of scenarios that I hope a couple of them will be exciting to folks. Please feel totally free to break out into spontaneous applause at any point in time. All right, that's a record. I'm at 1 minute and 40 seconds with applause, so I can kind of be done now. Then we'll go under the hood. We're not going to go super deep, but we'll talk a little bit about what's happening behind the scenes. I think that's really helpful for folks to understand. Then, as we announced this morning in the keynote, we're going into preview today. We'll talk a little bit about what's next and what's going to happen. If you've got questions along the way, for folks in the room, you can use the links over there. For folks online, you can go ahead and submit them. We'll be answering questions as we go. But then also, if we've got some time at the end, we might take some of those questions as well and answer them up here. And so what I want to start with are some of the challenges of cloud administration. And I'm really grateful. Our design team had some fun with this next one. But when I go out, when our team goes out, when we talk to you, and we talk about what are the challenges, you know, the common thing that comes up is just being asked to do more. And what's happening is that there are more users to support. They've got more needs. That means more workloads that have more requirements, that use more services, each of which having more capabilities. Inside that, there's middleware platforms, DevOps platforms. You might be going to multiple clouds or more environments. And so this is almost an exponential challenge. Every day, we all show up to work, and we're still there, and this is the work that we've got to go and do. And so not only do we hear a lot about needing to do more, there's a how aspect as well. And it needs to be done correctly, compliantly, safely, performantly, repeatably, cost-effectively, if I can say that. I think that's right. And there's probably a few others. And of course, things need to get done quickly. And so we're hearing this from you. And the questions that we always ask are, what can we build to help you more? We went out, we did some research, we talked to a number of folks, and the questions that came back were people wanted help with learning about Azure, understanding their environment, the individual services. They want to get those services deployed faster. They want to get them deployed correctly. They want to make sure that there are a number of different ways to store data. That's a little bit of a religious discussion, and so I'm not going to take sides in that one. But for the workload that I have, how do I learn what might work best? I've got a lot of low-risk tasks that I need to do. How can I more quickly automate those? And then as I'm doing that, as my environment, my applications, my infrastructure are functioning, how can I get insights about that? And of course, because we don't live in the ideal world, something will go wrong. An app won't be configured correctly, you'll run short of CPU, and you've got to troubleshoot. And we know, if we go back to that challenge of things getting bigger and there being more and more and more stuff, that challenge around troubleshooting is really hard, particularly when time is important. If your business can't function, that's a problem. And then lastly, as all of those are working well, I want to optimize the environment. And optimization can mean lots of things. It can be for performance, for latency, for reliability, for some form of compliance that you need. I may want to optimize cost, right? as we think about all of those trade-offs and choices, there's no one right answer. There's the right answer for what you need to be doing for the problems you're trying to solve. And so these are what we heard, and we'd love to hear more. If there are other things we should be doing, we really, really want to know that. And this is what we took into the process to build Microsoft Copilot for Azure. Microsoft Copilot for Azure is an AI companion that simplifies how we design, operate, optimize, and troubleshoot your apps, your services, your infrastructure, whether that's in the cloud or on the edge. We've disclosed today we're available in the Azure portal, and then we'll be expanding to the mobile app and CLI as well. We want to be available across those form factors, because we know, as partial as our team is to the portal and the mobile app, that's not the only place where you're managing and operating the cloud. When we look across at the different types of things we can do, those themes from the questions really come through. How can we get better, deeper insight more quickly, right? And I want that to be personalized to my environment. I want that to be aware of my environment. There's a lot out there. See that first slide that we talked about, the challenge? How do I discover the new functionality and the right functionality to use? And then as I'm trying to get my job done, how can I get complex things done faster, right? Whether that's optimization, whether that's writing complex queries. And then underneath all of this is a very deep belief of you as the user being in control. And so as we walk through this, you'll see there's a spectrum of help you can get from Copilot. You can just take the answer, move a query over, and then do everything as you've done before. Or you can actually leverage Copilot to actually perform the management operations as well. And so let's go ahead and quickly get to a demo. All right, and what you'll see here is I'm inside the Azure portal, and I am logged in as Cameron right now. Copilot's available in the top nav once you're approved into the preview. And we've built this as a sidecar in the portal. What this means is as you navigate through the portal, this will follow you. We've got a very natural chat interface here. And so what I'm going to ask is, how many resources do I have? And so what's happening here, I'm looking at the intent of that question. I'm figuring out how can I answer that question. Now, right now, we're going back to you and we're telling you, hey, I think this means I'm going to use an Azure Resource Graph query. Okay? So I'm going to go off, run that query, get the response back, and then as I get that response back, I'm going to give you, the user, a couple of options. As it will answer the question, the other option that I have is that I can go ahead and open this in the Azure Resource Graph Explorer. Let me mute this. And so I have a total of 9,060 resources. But as I mentioned earlier, this is very much where you are in control of how much Copilot you want. If you want to stop here and just describe a really complex query, and Cameron's got some really good examples of some really gnarly queries, and then bring it over to here to further customize, or take this and move this into another tool that you're using, you can go ahead and do that. Now, the other thing that I want to call out, and I'm going to make a special request to everybody here, is that I can also provide feedback. And this feedback's a really important signal to help us understand what responses are valuable, what responses are working really well for you. And so, of course, I'll give it a thumbs up. And I can also give it a thumbs down. What you'll see here is I can provide a little bit more information. Why didn't I like this response? That could be everything from you did not like the tone to you did not think it was the right answer. You can provide us some information. You can also share the details of the prompts with us. That's your data. You are in control of that. But if you want to send that so that we can go and improve the experience, please do. Now, this showed a query against the Azure Resource Graph. And the really powerful thing about this is that everything that is connected to Azure is something that Copilot's able to reason about. And so if I think about clusters running on the edge, connected via Arc, I can say, how are my edge clusters doing? All right, Copilot's not going to go out and run on the edge, but because that information is available to me in the resource manager and resource graph, I can actually go and find out that, within the subscriptions I have access to, and by the way, it also will respect the subscription filters. So if I only want to look at my dev test subscriptions to optimize cost, I can do that. It's going to return, hey, these are the 3,313 active alerts. Somebody probably tripped over a power cord backstage across 30 resources. And then I can go ahead and check on those. Now, the last thing that I want to show, and this is my favorite feature, this is my delighter. I recognize when people use tools, they've got preferences. And so I can also do something like change to dark mode. Because it's really important. That's how I like to work. I don't want to have this bright portal. And so it'll go ahead and change to dark mode. We're really excited about that one. What's cool about this one, this is actually the first thing that we had working. And so it was super cool as this was coming together. That was how we got together, and we're like, look, it works. I can change the theme. You can also go ahead and ask what other themes are there and things like that. And so really quick, that's a quick introduction here. It runs in the portal. It's got context of what you're doing in the portal, what resource you're looking at. So if I say, do this to this VM, and I'm looking at a VM, you don't have to type in what that is. It's going to know what it is. And then let's go ahead and go back to slides and move forward here. And as we talked about in the kind of positioning statement, we really think about Copilot for Azure being able to be used across the lifecycle. And that is across design, operate, optimize, and troubleshoot. We think of these 4 buckets as really capturing a lot of what we see and what we hear from our users, what they're doing on a daily basis. With design, it's about creating and configuring the services that are needed, but also doing that in alignment with the policies, procedures, rules of my organization. A lot of what we need to do is around operations, answering questions, what's going on, how can I get to some complex command? How can I simply find where that setting is? If you think about the breadth of really any cloud, the one I think about the most is Azure, obviously, but there's a ton of services, and they've got a lot of different knobs and dials that I can turn. How can I get to the right spot in the tooling to do what I need to do? Troubleshooting, this is where we want to be able to orchestrate across services, look around, get some insights, possibly rely on the Copilot to summarize the issues or suggest causes or solutions, and then help me take those solutions. And then finally, optimization is really about improving the costs or scale or reliability through recommendations for your environment. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to switch to some demos. Cameron's going to come up and talk to those. We've got these recorded as demos that we shot last week. We did a little bit of light editing so that we could pack as many in as possible. I think there's some really exciting scenarios in there. Please give some feedback in the room with applause or boos if there's something that you really, really don't like. But I think you're going to really like everything. So Cameron, come on up.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. I'm thrilled to be here at Ignite to showcase our new way of interacting with Azure Portal, empowering you all to achieve more with less effort. Let's start off with design. Those of you who are cloud architects and IT admins know that designing your cloud environment is a constant task. Together, let's set up our fresh tenant and leverage Copilot to design a secure management group structure. We started by asking if Azure Security Benchmark, ASB, is the solution for us. We learned that ASB is a full set of policies to enforce security. So what do we do now, and how do we get it assigned? Copilot behind the scenes will fetch docs and prepare for us a step-by-step guide teaching us how to assign ASB through the portal. But we're cloud architects who don't work in isolation. We must standardize and review this process. And the easiest way to do that is to ask Copilot to generate an ARM template for us. It'll assign ASB to our root management group, and then we can go ahead and have it create more child management groups that represent our departments. Subscriptions will be moved inside them, and they'll inherit the ASB policy. We can, of course, review the strategy with Copilot to make sure this architecture makes sense for us. And by the end of the conversation, Copilot returns a script to deploy our exact security posture. I'm sure that most of you came to the session expecting Copilot to generate code to plug and play into your workloads, and you assumed correctly. You can actually offload all of your requirements with Copilot to get your workloads done faster. Watch how Copilot handles ad hoc code generation to generate a Kubernetes file that runs a cron job every day at midnight. Copilot works in the background, generating a script for us, so that all we really have to do is replace the dummy values with our container name. Thanks to Copilot, I can now close out this ticket, and I could even do it myself as a PM. Say we're designing a custom template. We can go ahead and go to the custom deployment service, and we can work directly in there to design our ARM template exactly the way we need it to be. So let's tell Copilot to design a web application with Azure SQL and some other additional requirements. Copilot will return to us a script to generate this precise template that we need for our workload. We can run the script in Cloud Shell to get the template, copy and paste, and deploy here immediately. In terms of design, there's one last thing I need to show you. Within the API management service, Copilot is integrated into the UI. We can ask what this code does simply by highlighting it and right-clicking to launch it in Copilot. We'll ask our best friend Copilot to analyze the lines and explain what these lines of code mean to us. And it'll respond back telling us that these lines of code are responsible for validating our requests. So next, let's design a new policy for our API. Our team asked us to add rate limiting, and we've never done that before. Rather than launching any new tabs or doing any outside research, we can just ask our assistant. Whether it's designing JSON, XML, CLI, PowerShell, ARM templates, Bicep, you can trust Copilot to be your second brain. For your day-to-day tasks, Copilot is baked with features to help you operate and manage your resources. For example, we can ask Copilot, which resources were modified in the last 24 hours? And Copilot will construct our Kusto query, as Matt mentioned earlier. It's queries like this that you use to learn about your resource inventory and learn about your Azure environment. And in fact, the ability to generate these Kusto queries on the fly like this is how Copilot accurately answers your questions in real time and performs tasks on your behalf. Not to mention, Copilot can help you catch up on your latest alerts. And I love this feature, just because it saves us time clicking around and allows us to just focus more on the affected resources. Generating Kusto queries are particularly helpful in retrieving the live state of our resources. For example, we can fetch the virtual machines that are running right now and filter for a tag. All queries generated by Copilot can be confirmed in Azure Resource Graph Explorer. And once the query executes, we find the VM that we can work with. My favorite feature in both Portal and the mobile app is the ability to execute commands. The same commands that you come to Portal to execute, like start or stop a VM or assign tags. In order to kick off the operation from chat, we need to confirm like always, and from there, we can track it in the notification center. Copilot supports bulk commanding up to 5 resources at a time, but this limitation promotes automation. We can always generate a script to mirror exactly what we do in Portal. And generating a script like this is a great example where Copilot uses its entire toolkit to answer our questions. Amazing. Our VM that we stopped in chat just finished, and at the same time, we've got our generated CLI for parity as well. So to conclude on Operate, we can also quickly monitor our resources. By simply typing into a chatbot, show me platform VMs, or show me platform metrics for this VM, we can save time clicking around and actually fetch our charts in place. Less time squinting at these charts and looking for metrics, we immediately can tell that our CPU usage is down, and we can ask for more metrics. As we developed the product, my manager, Adam, urged me to be the voice of our customers. So I know many of you are itching to get to this part of the presentation. Let's start reducing our costs by asking Copilot how much we're spending on virtual machines. Copilot provides to us a ranked list of VMs that have the most spend with their respective charges. But now we need to know how it fits into that big picture spend. So when we ask Copilot this, it shares a breakdown of the total cost broken down by service and tells us specifically that VMs are only 9% of our cost. Well, then at this rate, we need to know how to budget for the next 3 months. And as you can expect, Copilot takes care of all of the work, and will let us know exactly how much to anticipate. Whoa, over the next 3 months, it's going to cost way more than we expected. So let's ask Copilot, which resources can we look at to reduce our costs? Copilot will go ahead and fetch those resources, and it turns out that it's actually VM scale sets that's the bulk of our costs. Instead, we should focus our attention optimizing those. But optimizing our cost doesn't always happen retroactively. We can proactively optimize our cost before resources are even deployed. If we go to the Create experience for virtual machines, we get nudged to use Copilot to fill out the form. Choosing the option Create a low-cost virtual machine, Copilot will guide us through the creation. Notice how seamless Copilot autofills while also allowing us full control of the form. If values aren't filled in already, that's not a problem. Copilot will fill them in for us. It even helps us create a new resource group automatically. And after a few clicks, all we have to do is wait for a successful deployment. And in a few minutes, we've successfully created a low-cost virtual machine just by using chat. But how low cost is it? If we launch the new resource, we need to forecast its cost to see how much it will run for 8 hours every day. Copilot will do this assessment for us, looking at our configuration for this VM, and tell us that we will only have to spend $1.88 for this VM. So far, we've only been discussing generated code, but Copilot goes a step further, providing code suggestions for your live applications running on Azure. Within Application Insights, we can prompt Copilot to help us make code optimizations. It'll launch us into this dedicated experience where we can begin tackling the #1 issue affecting our CPU performance. Or we can browse the full list of optimizations suggested by AI. From this experience, I can go ahead and create a GitHub issue or a work item to get our work started immediately in DevOps. Now, Copilot not only excels in retrieving the latest and relevant documentation, but like Matt says, it excels in troubleshooting. Copilot is loaded with agents to run investigations, solving our cases faster. We can have Copilot just figure it out by saying our web app is down or our web app is slow. It'll have me select and confirm the correct web app we're talking about, and in this case, it's my web app, Get a Puppy. From there, it'll go ahead and run the investigation into our app CPU usage. Once complete, we're redirected into the web app down tool to see more about what's going on. We can ask questions, of course, to see what information we're looking at and really understand how to make use of it. But let's explore what other tools are available to troubleshoot. And we can do this very easily by asking Copilot to show us proactive tools. Copilot gets to work and navigates us to the diagnostic tools experience. Here, there will be a large catalog of tools for us to navigate. We see over here that there's a tool called AutoHeal, and we don't know what it means. Of course, you get the idea. You can ask Copilot to explain what we see in this context to decide if this will be the best tool to solve our app's issues. For common troubleshooting tasks, Copilot has you covered. You bet the assistant can find anomalies in Edge and Arc resources or help reset your keys. If we get real specific and jump to a storage account, we can ask Copilot why our availability has decreased. But more importantly, we can ask how to fix it. The assistant asks us if we want to run an investigation into the storage account's data. And after that job is done, there are a ton of recommendations for us. So let's see which ones we should prioritize. We can directly ask which recommendations will resolve our issue for the storage account. And for the last generated message for this demo, Microsoft Copilot for Azure returns the top action items to get the job done. And with that, I'll hand it back to Matt. Thank you.
All right. So that was about, I didn't count all of them, I think 25 to 30 different demos in about 14 minutes. So one more time. Nice job, Cameron. All right. And let's go ahead and switch back to slides. I think. Oh, I have to go to slides because we're already there. So we talked about the Azure portal being where Copilot is at today. Quick show of hands, how many folks use the Azure mobile app? Okay, awesome, awesome. I'd like to challenge the remaining 80% of the room to go ahead and download it. So the Azure mobile app is a cloud companion app on mobile for managing the cloud. And it's the most highly rated cloud companion app on iOS. And what we hear from folks is really loving the ability to get fast access to alerts and health management. And so you can securely manage Azure from your device while you're on the go. And so what we're doing is putting Copilot into the mobile app. And we think this is a huge productivity boost because as we move forward, those capabilities that you saw around being able to understand the resources will be surfaced there in the mobile app as well. And so that's going to be a little bit later. We're still working on that. That's not in the preview today, but I just want to show a little preview of coming attractions, as well as put a plug in for giving the mobile app a try. All right, so now we're going to pivot, and we're going to go talk a little bit about what's happening behind the scenes. What happens when I'm in the portal? I type that question, I click go. And what I'd like to start off with is, at my core, I'm really a data guy. And one of the really interesting things about Azure is the rich data model that sits behind it. And if you think about it, that's what's reflected on this layer cake diagram here. All the way from the infrastructure of what are the regions that are available? What are the availability zones that are in those regions? Then we get into the services. Every service has its own capabilities. It has its own tool chains. It has its own ways of integrating. And then we're really fortunate from a modeling perspective that we have the Azure Resource Model and Azure Resource Graph on top of that. But if you think about that from a data perspective, that allows me a way to describe resources, their attributes, and the actions that we can take on them. That's kind of interesting from a how would I build a model on top perspective. That's a really interesting data set of, as I get a question about how to reboot a VM, well, got a VM object, that's interesting. There's a reboot, restart method on it. Okay, I can start making some inferences about that. On top of that, we've got governance in the form of policy and RBAC and tags. We've got data sources, whether that's the documentation, which exists outside of your subscription, or costs, which have both a data model as well as the instances of that model within your subscriptions. Same thing with logging and monitoring. So if I want to ask what's going on with this VM, I know from the data model that a VM has these types of metrics available. And again, we're going to use that here. Then on top of that, we've got the various tooling, whether that's the SDK, the CLI, PowerShell, Bicep, etc. So those are our data sources that also describe a really interesting data model. On top of that, we're going to put a large language model. This is the Copilot large language model. This is what we're going to use to understand both the intent of what's being discussed as well as the context. Because you're in the portal, we know where you're at. We know what resources you're looking at. We also know some other things about your subscription. And so we take that intent, we take that context to construct a plan to go and answer that question. If you think about all of those different data sources, there are different ways to go and access those. And that's where the plan is really important. So then on top of that, we've got the interfaces, portal, mobile app, CLI, and then we've got the user. The other thing that's really, really interesting about this that we touched on at the top of the talk is anything that feeds into that data model is something that we can reason over. So if I think about having a bunch of edge-connected devices through Arc that's feeding information back to Azure, gosh, I can ask questions about those as well. That's a really, really powerful thing. And so we now have identified the intent from the user. What do we think you want to try and do? We've come up with a plan for how we think we can answer it. And then what happens is we go ahead and try and answer that. And when we try and answer that, we are acting on behalf of the user. So this is a really interesting point and something that's come up a lot. I can already see, I think one of the first questions is around permissions. This operates as the user. So all RBAC policy, et cetera, is respected. There's no elevated access at any point in time. We're returning a plan that is activated and operated by the user. And so all of that policy and RBAC works. So we inherit your security, compliance, and privacy policies. And a couple of other questions that come up when we talk about this is, all of the data that's used here, we treat that the exact same way as we treat all of your data in Azure, which is at the utmost levels of trust and compliance. And so again, this is how we go from a question or something that's typed in the chat. We take a bunch of that context, we take that data model, we put that together, and we come up with a plan. Then we start executing that plan. That's going to get a set of results that will come back. In that case of how many resources I have, that first result is, hey, I think the plan is I'm going to run this Azure Resource Graph query. We run that query, some results come back. And then we know, what you asked was for the count, so I probably can summarize it this way. If I ask for the top 5 VMs or the top 5 spending things, hey, I probably want to be able to display that in a nice tabular view, right? And then the last thing to call out here is if anything comes back that has a potential side effect, rebooting a VM, stopping something, changing a setting, we're going to let the user make the choice to actually do that. So if you think back to Cameron's demos or the demo in the keynote this morning around rebooting the VM, we're not going to reboot the VM just because you said that. We're going to come back and say, hey, this is the VM, please click this button. So there is a safety on top of that. We always want you to be in control of any action that might have a side effect. All right, so that was a walkthrough, a little bit behind the scenes. I really look forward to build or ignite as we go forward, and we can get super geeky as to what's happening with the model and how we're kind of composing all of that. It's super cool. We'll talk about that as we go forward. So what's next? So on our path here, we've released this and we've been running this inside of the Microsoft tenant for a little while now. We've had a bunch of users. We've also had a small external private preview. If anybody in the room has been involved in that, thank you. But today, we're moving to a phase of opening up for signups for a public preview. And so in the resources, there's a link to go ahead and sign up. And we'll be processing those. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. And so where do we go from here? Well, we're really, really excited to be starting the preview and getting larger here so that we can learn, what are you finding useful? What do you wish was there? What could we go and make better? And as I look at the path forward from preview to GA, it's really going to be about improving the quality of those answers, improving the quality of that understanding, building out some new capabilities. You saw a couple of hints of things in the demos that Cameron showed, and those are available in the preview today, where, hey, within the pane in the portal, I can actually suggest, hey, try this for Copilot. Within an editing experience, right-click, explain this to me, right? And that's just we've got lots of ideas, but we want to really hear about the scenarios and the use cases that are most valuable to you, and then work to figure out how we can design the interface to best suit that. The other thing that we're going to do is continue to expand Copilot's knowledge across all of those data sources, right? So right now, we have teams like the Kubernetes team that have put in a lot of work on building up even more understanding about that service. More teams inside of Azure are going to continue to do that. And so out of the box, Copilot for Azure works across any resource that's deployed by the Azure Resource Manager. And then teams can go ahead and add additional capabilities on top of that. And so that'll continue to expand. If you have a favorite service, you can give feedback around, gosh, I'd really love it if this service did that. And I'm sure the team will be happy to work on that. And if they're not, you can email me and I'll see if I can make them happy about it. And then ongoing, this is one of the things that's so exciting about this is the amount of learning that we get to do on this journey. Like, we're never done here. We're going to keep trying to make the answers better. And that feedback that you send is super, super critical to that. All right. So, in order to get started, sign up for the preview. The link is at the bottom here. We're going to be processing approvals regularly. Just full disclosure, it's probably not going to happen this weekend. The team's had a really hard push to get to here today. But as we go forward, we'll be regularly processing those. We'll have a number of opportunities for folks to engage with us. We really, if folks are interested in this and folks want to dive in, we would love to find ways to help get that feedback from you. And then again, I just want to put a plug in. The little thumbs up, thumbs down, tell me what's going on. That's super important. So if you can do that, if you're comfortable doing that, if you're comfortable sharing what's working, what's not working, I would really appreciate it. It's going to help us build the product better, faster. So, resources, we've got a discussion, the blog post. These are all in the resources link for the session. I think there's a QR code that we'll show later. The documentation is live today, so you can go ahead and get started looking at the documentation. A number of teams have featured Microsoft Copilot for Azure in other sessions throughout Ignite. I know there were a bunch yesterday. There were a number more today. So it's possible you'll see this pop up in a few other places, and all of you who attended this talk will be like, oh, I actually know how this works. And so enjoy that. And then with that, we've got just a little bit of time. And so I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of questions. If you have more questions, feel free to go ahead and submit them. That way I can see them up here. The team over there is picking them. They're also answering a bunch of them. All right, so let's go ahead with the first one, which is, can Copilot suggest solutions to reduce the spending on Azure? This one's an easy one. Yes, it can. We showed that demo this morning. We also showed it earlier. The cost management team has worked really, really hard because we know this scenario is super interesting to folks. That works today out of the box. We'll continue to continue to improve that. Next question is, does it adhere to RBAC? As we talked about the behind or under the hood, you're always operating as the user who is logged in, right? And so all of the RBAC and policy that you've got on top of your resources is going to be honored. If I don't have access to a resource, to perform a management function, I'm not going to get that. If I don't have access at all to the resource, that's not going to be included when I run a query. All right. And so with that, I just want to thank all of you. We've just about packed the room today. It's at 1:30. It's day 2. probably had a good time at the party last night. Maybe you went to some other parties. So I know that this time gets a little slow from a conference perspective. So I just want to thank everybody for coming, for being engaged. And I just want to thank you for your excitement and really, really look forward to your feedback. And I'm just really, really excited about that. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.